accept your nomination for President of the United States.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump on Thursday formally accepted the Republican Party's nomination for president. His keynote address at the Republican National Convention comes just days after he narrowly escaped an assassination attempt in Pennsylvania, which Trump detailed in a 14-minute account.
I heard a loud whizzing sound and felt something hit me really, really hard on my right ear. I said to myself, wow, what was that? It can only be a bullet.
After a dramatic entrance, the former president struck a rare conciliatory tone up front.
I am running to be president for all of America, not half of America, because there is no victory in winning for half of America.
The message of unity didn't last long, however, and Trump soon pivoted to well-worn attacks on the Biden administration in a meandering 90-minute-plus speech, the longest ever at a convention. Trump claimed without evidence that his criminal indictments are part of a Democratic conspiracy to prevent his election. He also warned that Joe Biden, his rival in the November election, would usher in World War III while casting himself, as he has many times, as the only candidate capable of saving the country from certain doom.
I could stop wars with a telephone call.
Trump devoted much of his speech to attacking migrants, a common theme in his presidential campaigns.
They're coming from everywhere. They're coming at levels that we've never seen before. It is an invasion indeed, and this administration does absolutely nothing to stop them. They're coming from prisons. They're coming from jails. They're coming from mental institutions and insane asylums.
Academic studies show that immigrants do not commit crime at a higher rate than native-born Americans. The speech capped a 4-day event in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in which Trump's grip on the Republican Party appeared tighter than ever.
God bless the United States of America, our great country. Thank you very much, everybody.
Biden, meanwhile, is isolating at his home in Delaware with what his doctor said were mild symptoms of COVID-19. The president has faced mounting pressure from within his own party to drop out of the race since a shaky debate performance in late June. For weeks, Biden has remained adamant that he will remain on the ticket, but he is now reportedly taking calls to step aside seriously. One source said he was, quote, soul-searching about whether to withdraw from the race. Multiple Democratic officials think an exit is only a matter of time, according to sources familiar with the matter.
Rwanda's President Paul Kagame has been re-elected with 99.18% of the vote, the National Electoral Commission said on Thursday. That result, off a reported turnout of 98%, gives him a fourth term and extends his near quarter-of-a-century rule. And it's not exactly a surprising result. Kagame won more than 93% of the vote, according to the Commission, in the previous 3 elections. He helped lead the rebel movement that ended Rwanda's 1994 genocide and has since been praised for rebuilding the country of 14 million people after that most horrific of chapters. The US State Department and others have lauded the development of the economy. But Kagame's government has also been accused by Western nations and rights activists of muzzling the media, assassinating opponents, and backing rebel groups in neighboring Congo. The government has denied all accusations against it. 8 candidates, including some of Kagame's most vocal critics, were barred from the election, with the commission citing reasons including missing and incomplete paperwork. During campaigning, the president promised continued development and stability.
China's economy has a bumpy road ahead, officials said on Friday. They said a list of economic goals from a key Communist Party meeting this week had many complex contradictions. Tang Fangyu is part of the Central Committee's Policy Research Office.
Pushing forward Chinese-style modernization faces many complex conflicts and problems, and we must overcome multiple difficulties and obstructions through further comprehensive deepening of reforms, promoting better alignment between production relations and productive forces, the superstructure and economic base, state governance, and social development.
Pressure for deep changes in China's economy has risen this year as consumer and business sentiment hit near record lows. Global leaders have also grown more concerned with China's export dominance. The comments come following a 4-day closed-door meeting led by President Xi Jinping, which takes place once in roughly 5 years. Officials there made a number of seemingly contradictory pledges, including modernising the industrial complex while also expanding domestic demand. They also talked of stimulating growth and simultaneously curbing debt risks. The initial summary of the meeting didn't contain details of how Beijing plans to resolve tensions between policy goals. One such contradiction would be how to get consumers to spend more while resources flow mostly to producers and infrastructure. Market concerns are growing that a structural shift is needed to give consumers a greater role in the economy. Without that, analysts say debt could outpace growth to finance Beijing's industrial modernisation and global prominence goals. Some analysts warn the current path fuels risks of a prolonged period of near stagnation and persistent deflation threats, as seen in Japan since the 1990s. China is expected to publish a document with more detailed policy plans in the coming days.
Hit shows like Bridgerton helped Netflix beat targets in the second quarter. The streaming giant said Thursday it added 8 million subscribers, easily beating the 5 million predicted by analysts. However, the company is facing saturation in the US and plans to stop reporting subscriber additions next year. That puts the focus on its ad business instead, and the picture there is more uncertain. Netflix warned that advertising wouldn't become a main driver of revenue growth until at least 2026. Talking to analysts, Chief Financial Officer Spencer Newman said ad sales were growing nicely, but from a small base. For the April to June quarter, Netflix posted earnings of $4.88 per share, beating forecasts. Revenue came in at just below $10 billion, matching predictions. The company warned that subscriber growth in the third quarter would be lower than the same time last year, when it had just started to crack down on password sharing. Netflix stock gained 1% in US after-hours trade and is up around a third this year.
As avian flu continues to spread across poultry farms in the U.S., egg and chicken producers are increasingly faced with culling their herds exposed to the virus. But experts are now beginning to warn that the process of killing the birds and disposing their carcasses could pose its own risks to humans and animals. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention this week said that the conditions inside a Colorado egg farm during the culling process likely contributed to cases of bird flu among workers, which amounted to the largest cluster of human cases of avian flu in the U.S. so far. Reuters correspondent Leah Douglas has been covering the outbreak.
It was 104 degrees in Colorado. They were working under large industrial fans that were blowing feathers around. It was difficult for the workers to keep their PPE, their personal protective equipment, in place, their masks in place, and it may have contributed, those factors may have contributed to the number of infections that occurred in that particular farm, which so far the CDC has confirmed 4 human cases and 1 presumptive positive human case from that one farm in Colorado.
The workers had mild symptoms, including pink eye and respiratory issues. Data from the U.S. Department of Agriculture obtained by Reuters show about 95 million chickens, turkeys, and other poultry have been killed and disposed of since February 2022 through late June. After the herds are culled, the question becomes what to do with the carcasses.
Experts in depopulation and disposal of chickens say that the safest option in terms of controlling the spread of the virus is to compost the carcasses on the farm. That just contains where the birds' bodies are going, and so it makes it least likely that the virus will spread. In a case where the animals may need to be disposed of in a landfill, the concern there is mostly about the transportation process. So in the process of trucking these birds from the farm to a landfill, will there be some cross-contamination with other farms, for instance? One expert also in an interview referenced the potential that wild birds could contract the virus at a landfill and spread it, which is a very common way that avian flu moves from farm to farm.
U.S. data show just 3% of all poultry have been disposed of in landfills since 2022. Bird flu has migrated to nearly every U.S. state over the past 2.5 years. There have been 9 cases among poultry and dairy workers since March, including the Colorado cases. The CDC has said further bird flu spread among livestock could increase the likelihood of human infections, though the risk to the general public is still low.
The European Central Bank kept interest rates unchanged as expected on Thursday, and it gave no hints about its next move. The ECB has said domestic price pressures remain high and inflation will be above its target well into next year. ECB President Christine Lagarde.
We are determined to ensure that inflation returns to our 2% medium-term target in a timely manner. We will keep policy rates sufficiently restrictive for as long as necessary to achieve this aim.
The ECB cut rates from record highs last month, but it was a move even some of its policymakers thought was rushed after progress on lowering inflation to 2% stalled. Some analysts believe the bank will likely be more cautious about a follow-up step due to persistently high inflation and issues around wage growth. The ECB came out with a balanced message following Thursday's meeting. It argued corporate profits were absorbing some price pressures, but the bank said risks remained and further evidence was needed before policymakers could cut rates again.
Domestic price pressures are still high, services inflation is elevated, and headline inflation is likely to remain above our target well into next year.
The ECB repeated it will not pre-commit to any particular rate path, and incoming data would guide its future decisions. The focus now shifts to the bank's September meeting, with scores of economic data due out before then. Markets have priced in almost 2 rate cuts over the rest of the year, while investors also project a little more than 5 moves by the end of next year.